And you're being filmed. There we go.
So good morning, everyone. Just to preface this shir, this was originally designed to be a shir for a Mincha Maariv slot on Shabbos this week, but we're as a substitute for that because Rav Avi was around. We're going to be doing it now. It's a series of segments of mini shirim, so we're going to see how much we get through, but they're all discrete sections, so we're not going to get through the whole sheet this morning. But essentially, what it's around, what I'd like to speak about, is the minhagim surrounding Kriyat Torah and Hagba and Gelilah. So, just as a small introduction, we have a lot of very ritualistic things which we're very particular about how they're done in the shul. We have quite a lot of it, which is halacha. We have elements which are minhag, and we also have elements which are probably not really based on anything, but we still nonetheless do. But the question is, why is this careful ritual that everything we do is prescribed and carefully done? Why is that so important? So, in general, the service in the Beit HaMikdash, the service in the shul, is modelled off to some degree the service in the Beit HaMikdash, which was as we've seen from the parashah we've been going through, very, very carefully, step by step, the korbanot, which get to a particular point, and so the shul, the Beit HaKnesset, to some degree is modelled off of that. But why is that so important? So a lot of it is to do with an element of symbolism. So we have all the things we are doing in the service have symbolic value. Some of that symbolism is reflexive. Some of that is trying to make an impression on us, and some of it is more external focus. So there's a reflexive symbolism, such as some suggest that the procedure of the shacharit service models going into a house of a king and offering a request. So you start off standing, then you go into maybe an antechamber of some kind. You're sitting, so you've got Sukkot Zimra, you're on the outside, getting in more close to the king, but still not quite there. With Kriyat Shema, we sit down, waiting, and then finally we reach the Amida, which is our moment to speak to the king, and then coming backwards afterwards, going into Ashrei, and then finally Aleinu and leaving. So some of that tries to build an impression on us. There's also an element which is more outward focus, which is our opportunity. I always think it's an interesting word that we use when we say it's the morning service. We have Shacharit service. Why have we chosen that word? So presumably it's a translation of avodah, like the avodat hamishkan, avodat Hashem. So we have, to some degree, we are, as it were, providing a service. We're trying to do something to show ourselves to Hashem, show some honor to Hashem. And I'd like to just read a very small piece from the Rambam before we start, which Rav Lichtenstein points out. This is in the Rambam in Hilchot Beit V'chira. And I thought this was a very nice analogy where he points out, he compares service to Hashem or guarding the mitzvot like the Buckingham Palace guards. And he points out this halacha. Shmirat HaMikdash mitzvot aseh. Guarding the Mikdash, the Beit HaMikdash, is a mitzvot aseh. But afal pi she'ein sham pachat me'oivim v'lo me'listim. Even though there was no, in general terms, on a day-to-day basis, they weren't worried about enemies coming into the Beit HaMikdash. What was the importance of the guarding? She'ein shmirato ela kavod lo. Guarding provides a dignity and honor. You can't compare a palace which has guards to ones which doesn't. And I think to some degree what we're trying to do with our service is be almost those guards, be those servants, and sort of have a very dignified service, a deliberate, prescribed, ritual service where we show our honor and show the dignity to Hashem and the mitzvah. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into this. Again, I don't know how much we'll get through. They're all discrete sections. So if we don't get through so much, doesn't matter. They're all sort of self-contained. So number one, a question. How many Gabayim do we have standing around the bimah? So, we'll throw it out there. Any takers? How many should there be? Two? Okay. One calling up and one turning out. How many people in total do we have?
The clerk is 3 and the president and the is 4.
4. So it could be... So you could have as many as 5, including the current person who's been called up, right? So you've got So you could have as many as 5. Sometimes, for some reason, some shuls have other people randomly around, so you can have a whole crowd around there. But Lamaisa, we seem to have quite a lot of people throwing around. So what I just want to look at is source number 1. How many people do we actually need? So says the Shulchan Aruch, so in a case where, say you're going to call up the person who's laning, right? So he's going to do the call up and he's going to lane. Sarach Shamot Acher Eitzlo. You need another person there. So you've got the person who called him up, then you need the Balkar, and you need someone else. Shekashem Shenitzna Torah Alidei Sarser. The Torah was given through an intermediary, so thus we need to treat it when we read the Torah. We need to have an intermediary. So we're going to look at the Mishnah Berurah. He explains what's going on here, and this is based off a Levush. The Levush was Mordechai Jaffe, I think, in the again maybe the 1600s, I believe. So says the Mishnah Berurah. Nohagin shahagabai or hakona hamitzvot omeid eitzel sefer Torah. So we have the Gabbai standing by the sefer Torah. V'zen ikras skan. He's called skan. Kadei sheh gimel, so that there should be at least 3 people surrounding around the bima. So this is the end of the first line of the Mishnah. Hayinu shehaskan hu kivyachol b'makam Hashem yitbarach. Shehu mitzvah lekrot lechol mi sheyirteh v'hakore. So he is almost in the place keilu as Hashem. So we're already starting with some strong symbolism. We've got 3 people around. Let's see how it goes. So the Gabbai is, as it were, modeling Hashem. V'hakore hu hasarasur, b'makom Moshe. The one who's laning is the intermediary. He's in the place of Moshe Rabbeinu. V'ha'ola hu hamakaba b'makom kol Yisrael v'shlichutam. The one who's called up is standing in place of the people of Israel. So what we've got already, and what seems to be without realizing this, the symbolism there, that when we have a laning, any case of laning, we have 3 people there at least. One being Hashem, who calls Moshe, who's the Baal Korah to the Torah, who then reads, who's then makabel by the Olah. So there's already this model of Har Sinai going on just in the laning.
I've met Gabbai who thinks they are.
Yes. Well, we're going to go and finish this Mishnah Berurah. We actually don't have time to say so much more, but we'll see. So this is one of my favorite Mishnah Berurahs because he talks about Gabbayim in detail. אלא ששם איתה טעם אחר, לזה וזל, in detail, אינו מן המובחש שיעמוד החזן יחידי לפני הצבע, אלא שיעמדו עמו אחד למינו ואחד לשמאלו כנגד האבות. There's another minhag, another reason why we have 3, which is כנגד האבות. Just thinking. So let's continue this Mishnah Berurah because this is from what I just said, something about Gabbayim, which I think is fascinating. Katav b'sefer Shari Ephraim. We should have for the Gabbai someone who's an honored person, someone who does good actions, and people feel good about him. They don't think that he's gonna unduly, out of bias, give someone honor where they're not due. Or behefach, v'chein ra'ula tzibur shelo yaharhu achar haskan v'idonu oto b'chol inyan l'chaf zechut. And it's also appropriate that the tzibur treat him and judge him favorably. If he does anything you don't understand, you should treat him favorably. I'm not going to read the whole Mishnah, but he goes on to talk about the importance of both having an honorable Gabbai who's there to call up to the Torah to provide this honor and who we trust, but equally on the tzibur that we have to assume that what he's doing is for the good of the tzibur and judge him favorably for that. So this is the first thing. I'm actually gonna, again, this is like I say, this is a slightly abridged form of a longer share. So we're gonna jump forward. But the main points here, Gabbayim around the base, around the bima, symbolizing that moment of Har Sinai where we have Hashem, Moshe, and Yisrael. And also the importance of having someone who is honored, who is someone who the congregation trusts as the Gabbai. We're going to jump forward again, just in the interest of time. I don't want to keep you too long. To Hagbah, which is another of our key elements of the Kriyat Torah. Now, some of us might know that in the Ashkenazi community, this is very different to the Sephardi communities. The Sephardim do Hagbah at the start, before they do the Kriyat Torah, and then they lane. Ashkenazim, we do the opposite. It so happens, that's just an interesting side point, if you learn the halacha of Hagbah, you'll notice it's right at the beginning of the halachot of Kriyat Torah. It becomes the first halacha of Kriyat Torah in the order of the Shulchan Aruch. The reason being the Shulchan Aruch was Sephardi. So there are marked comments that we do it afterwards, but just an interesting point there. All right, so if we can jump to the Nehemiah, this is the second source on page number 2. This is, there are a couple of discussions about where exactly the source for Hagbah is, but this is generally taken to be one of the key examples of it in Tanakh. By Tach Ezra HaSefer L'Einei Chol Ha'am, this is talking about this moment when Ezra lifts up, opens the Sefer Torah in front of the people. Ki me'al kol ha'am hayah, he was above everyone. V'chfitzcho amdu chol ha'am. And when he opened it, everyone stands up. Vayivarech Ezra et Hashem Elokim Hagadol Vayanu Chol Amen v'Amen. And Ezra praises Hashem b'ma'ol yadehem. They lift up their hands and say Amen v'Amen. Vayikdu vayishtachavu. They bow down and they worship Hashem. And they bow down to Hashem. So we have this moment in Tanakh which models the Hagbah, which we then do every time we open a Sefer Torah. Says the Shulchan Aruch. It says you show the writing of the Sefer Torah to the people, to the right and then to the left, then you do it forwards and backwards. It's a mitzvah for everyone, all the men and the women to see the writing and to bow down below. The Ramah goes on to say we do it after the services we've already said, and so on. So we have this mitzvah to show everyone in the community the Sefer Torah. Now, let's jump down. So which way? So let's go. This is more of a halachic point, perhaps, than a philosophical point. But which way do we go? Which way do we turn when we go to Hagbah? What do people do generally?
To the
right. Around. So it's a bit unclear. From the Shulchan Aruch, it almost seems that what you do is you turn right, left, and then you sort of come back forwards and backwards. So there is an issue. Some people, I think, it's not so ideal as if you come to the right and then to the left and then sit down, because you've got people in front of you who then can't see it. So you've got to at least make sure that everyone gets to see the writing. It's important that the mitzvah is for every single person to see the writing. The Panini Halacha and many others write that what you do, and this is based on the Mishnah Berurah as well, he writes, La'am v'hu made b'mizrach hateva, Yakib mizrach l'darom. So you turn to the right, so you're facing, you go from east, northeast, south, and then you keep going around and you do one full circuit. I had once in Bournemouth, I was trying to do this, and there was an elderly person who I hadn't realized was sitting right behind me with the second sefer, right caught him on, which was not my finest moment. Felt very bad. It's Hagbah injuries. Has to be careful of. Anyway, low moments. One thing to point out again about Hagbah, and again, we've got this again reenacting a Tanakh moment, a very symbolic moment. Says the Mishnah Berurah, it's important lirot haktav, says the Shulchan Aruch. So this is the second last source on the second page. It's important to see the writing. But tov sheireh ha'otiot. It's good to see the actual letters themselves. Until you can read them. Ken katav hamakubalim. There's a very kabbalistic idea that sam al yedei zeh nimshach or gadol al ha'adam. There's a great light goes on a person because of this, because of seeing the writing. I don't know exactly what that means. I can't tell you more than that. But you will see some people will go up and be very careful to actually see the individual letters of the Torah as it's lifted up. Okay, I think we're probably drawing close to the end of time, and as I say, we'll carry on.
How many columns?
So actually, okay, let's carry on.
So 5, 4.
So if you turn over the page, because we've mentioned it, we'll go through it inside. Yeah, so let's see the Mishnah Berurah at the top. Hamachaber katav din ze kodem hilchot kriyat Torah, but shekein minhag Sfardim. So this is what we've said. And the Machaber writes it before hilchot kriyat Torah, because that's the minhag of the Sfardim to lift up lahagbia kodem hakriya va'ayin lak mei behaga shemin haktin latzot hagba achar kriya. Fine. Then in the middle of the second line, hamagbia hasevet Torah miyah latevel harot la'am golala ad gimel dafim. So you write, and this is based on a comment in Masechet Sofrim. You should go up to 3 columns. He says, "Umagbiya v'efsha the davka neked gimel." He broke. There are opinions which means it has to be specifically 3. But nearly the talu lefikach hamagbiya. So the Mishnah Berurah seems to think it depends kind of how much you can do. Like if you can't, you do as much as you can. Some are very harsh on people who see it as like a competition. Like you're not meant to go, I can do 10, and that's really not covered. It's 3 is the sort of optimum, and the kids of Shulchan Aruch, as some of us might know as well. I personally had the Shamas in Bournemouth School once gave me lessons in how to do and Hagbah. When I they call up a young guy and say, you know how to do, but my first Hagbah was a bit of a disaster. I didn't drop it, but it wasn't great. And he pointed out with this Kish and Shulchan Aruch says, so you always find a seam as well, so when it goes, you don't rip it down. Okay.
Did you talk about the starting point?
So this is the thing I'm just going to conclude on, because I think we probably don't have so much time for some more. Yes, so some of us have. Well, let's show of hands. Who when you do the hugba, how many people lift up? Do that from here? Does anyone here lift up a pinky? You pick up pinky. Does anyone lift up an index finger? Anyone do what? So potentially somebody's doing that. Does anyone do anything else? Bows or
What do you do?
you do
Whole hand.
whole hand. Okay, interesting. Sit. So some do sit as well. So there's a lot of discussion, and I'm going to confess, the most comprehensive I could find was Chabad.org, had a long list of sources, which I couldn't find some of them inside because they're a little bit more obscure about what all these minhagim come from. It seems to be that the earliest source for this minhag to lift up a finger comes from Rav Mordechai Crispin, who apparently was a Rav on Rhodes, one of the Greek islands. Oh, well, there you are. A long Jewish history in Rhodes. Not always so popular.
Book of Maccabees, first mention of Jews, 2,200 years ago.
Ah, right. I think at one point they were like a third of the island was Jews. It's like
Well, 1944, there were supposed to be 4,000 before
Right.
they were removed.
Yeah, no, exactly. So Rav Crispin suggests that there is an idea about when it's based on a midrash that when the children would come to the Beit HaMikdash, there was an idea that that they would point to Hashem's name, and this was some sort of elevation for the children to point to Hashem's name, and that's what they're trying to do. Some have a more pragmatic, that it's just sort of part of the pasuk V'zot HaTorah. Well, V'zot HaTorah, that's it. So we're going to point to it. So there's some who suggest that this is V'zot HaTorah, that's why we point to it. The pinky finger, where does that come from? So I'll just read out just the little passage of what they say. So the earliest source that mentions pointing with the pinky is the Torah anthology Me'am Lo'ez. This would seem to be there would seem to be an even earlier source than Rav Crispin of Rhodes. So there's the section in Mayam Laws that talks about a custom to point to the Torah with the pinky, and that seems to have been a later edition. Some suggest that the pinky is from the pinky. The term for pinky is hazeret, which has the gematria of 613. It doesn't quite as one off, but that seems to be fairly close. Some think it's an expression of humility. Some think it represents the 5 fingers represents the 5 senses, and so it represents hearing. So we're trying to hear the Torah. Some think that, like the Rav says, actually, that we want to point to the index, but that's quite rude. So we're going to soften it by going to the pinky. So there's a bunch of ideas. In practical, and so the one final term, which I think connects more to the people who use the talit, is that it's an extension of the kissing the Sefer Torah, which was actually going to be on my final point, which we won't do because I think probably need to wrap up. But the final point is that there is a minhag to kiss the Sefer Torah, and so some who couldn't get there might have been holding up the talit to sort of be there. But that's so Lamaisa in practical terms, you can do whatever you want really. But some have that minhag. There is a basis for there are various ideas around it. They may have been inserted later, or they may have been original. But do whatever your minhag is.
The Sephardim, when they hold up that big box, at the beginning, the cousin of the Balko points with the yad.
Yeah.
He points to the actual portion they're reading with the yad, so people can focus on what they're actually reading.
Yes, I assume that's partly connected to what we said about the Mekubalim idea, that you really want to see those letters, and some Kabbalistic idea sort of is about really looking at those letters and seeing those letters as we lift it up. But just to wrap up, and I'm more than happy to chat with anyone who wants to talk about anything else that's on the sheets afterwards. But as you say, the rituals, and it's worth looking into the symbolism and the rituals that we have in our ordinary services, because more often than not, there is a huge amount of deep value and deep both halacha and minhag based on centuries and centuries of thought, which are meant to have, as I say, some impact on us, but also some opportunities for us to demonstrate our kavod for Hashem and our kavod for Torah. Yes, so actually I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. The only thing I saw was something against doing that. That it's meant to be facing. I'm sure I haven't seen anything which sort of says that Dworkin should do that. Which there may well be, but I think it's basically because if you're right-handed, isn't that right? Then when you're in Bereshit, sorry, when you're in Bezos Bracha, whichever it is, you want the whole of the Sefer Torah on the right hand rather than left hand. I don't know if there's any more. So then, if you switch it around, then obviously you're more stable. But I don't know if there's any more reason than maybe. But maybe.
Thank you very much for that. And to do Rabban and Kaddish now, Rabbi Chanani Bekasha Marasah Kadosh Baruch Hu Zakot Zel Fichach here Balem Thomas Moshe Madna Beis Mansiko Yavdil Torah V'Yadin. I'll say goodbye to those on Zoom. See you next week.
Listen properly from the king. Pay attention. Can you read it? You do exactly.